Hi, everyone. Barry McGuire here. Yes, it's Thursday. It's January the 21st. It's 5 p.m. here in Edmonton, so it is live at 5 time. Every week at this time, we chat about creative real estate items on Barry McGuire's Creative Real Estate Education Series. Now, those of you who've been watching will know that over the last few months, we've talked a lot about AFS, or Agreements for Sale, as a creative strategy. We did a workshop a few months ago, a focus workshop with our great focus team on Agreements for Sale. And time has come to move and look way more closely at another strategy, and that is the rent-to-own strategy, sometimes called lease options, but most of us call it rent-to-own, or RTO. I love RTO because it's a strategy that works all across Canada. It works in differing market conditions. It is can be quite a lucrative strategy, which is great. It's certainly lends itself to one of our main precepts, which is win-win. We love to work in the win-win area and insist that everybody we teach hears that, and we strongly encourage everybody to never do anything but a win-win deal. We never beat people up. We don't take advantage. So RTO fits it. It fits all the spaces. It checks all the boxes. And so, as a matter of fact, we're going to be doing another focus workshop coming up March the 6th of this year, March 6th, 2021. So an all-day focus workshop, again with our fabulous focus team. And in addition to our normal focus team, we're going to have, are you ready? Neil and Rachel Oliver. Neil and Rachel Oliver, our good friends and RTO experts. RTO experts. How do I know they're experts? Because they're in the RTO business. That is their full-time business. They've been doing this now for 11 years. 11 years. That's what they do. 400 plus RTO deals. I'm pausing there for effect, just to let 400 deals sink in to your brain. That's a lot of deals, of any kind of deals, certainly a lot of RTO deals. So 11 years ago, Neil and Rachel were doing something totally different. They didn't know an RTO from a horse's you know what. And now they know everything about RTO. So without any further of me blathering away here, we're gonna bring on Neil and Rachel Oliver. Hi, Neil. Hi, Rachel. How are you guys? Nobody's talking to me. What's going on? There they are. All right. So Neil and Rachel Oliver, two lovely daughters. They live in Ontario. As I said, their full-time business is RTO, 400 plus RTO deals. And tonight, instead of diving into things like, okay, how do you write that option, or how do you calculate that return on investment, or how do you get somebody qualified for a mortgage? Those are all things we're going to work on in detail. Detail. You know how Donna and I like detail in our upcoming focus workshop. Those are the how-tos, the nuts and bolts. What I want everybody to get is the background, the understanding. I want you to hear what went on in Neil and Rachel's lives that leads them to today, when they have an extremely successful business that they're very passionate about, that they're inspired about. I want you to be inspired by how Neil and Rachel got to this stage. So it's a fascinating story. Now before you guys got started on your rent-to-own business, you were successful in life and in business already. So I would just like you to kind of pick this up for me, maybe, I don't know, a year before you dove into the RTO business. Maybe tell us what you were doing, what companies, what was your job, what were you doing, what was driving you to think of doing something else because I know you had top level jobs at top level companies. It wasn't like you were sitting around, with nothing to do. So, Rachel, why don't you go first? What were you doing sort of 12 years ago that brought you to say, wonder if there's something else in life? Tell me about that.
Hey, Barry, thank you so much for having us today. So going back 12 years, wow, it seems like a century ago. I was working in my corporate job. I had a management position in an engineering firm. I was there for about 5 years, but my desire to pursue real estate started way before that 12-year mark. I always envisioned myself as having life freedom, and I always envisioned pursuing the path of entrepreneurship. And I figured real estate was probably going to be the best way to try to kind of achieve that goal. So I remember, even as far as maybe 18 years ago, saying to Neil that we're not going to stay in our full-time jobs forever. We're going to find a way to make money a different way so we can have more time freedom.
Well, and I think that notion resonates with a lot of people. They have jobs, they might like their jobs, but I do feel that there's something else, something that might bring them a little more freedom. Real estate does, I think. Real estate is that. How can I describe it? Real estate is the mechanism that a lot of people think will bring them out of that job and into the freedom and have more time with the family and still earn a decent living. So you were mulling it for a long time. What about you, Neil? I mean, were you always having anything like that in the back of your mind? What were you doing and what were you thinking 12 years ago?
Well, Barry, I was living the dream. I was working for somebody else. I was quite happy to have benefits. These were the things that I was told I needed to have growing up, and I had them. And Rachel brought the idea of doing real estate forward, and I was Mr. No, as she's aptly and lovingly, I hope, to call me. And I was like, not a chance. I'm not giving up my job. There's no way that we're going out on our own. We have the potential. Well, at that point we had children on the way, and we were like, no, we need benefits. We need to make sure that, we can look after our family and put food on the table. And then she started to convince me, to be honest with you. She would go out to a lot of meetups, and she would learn and educate herself while I stayed home with the baby and watched hockey or something else that was so productive at the time. And over the course of that year, she basically, illustrated how important it was for us to be looking at another way of living our life, another way of generating an income. And I was on board as long as we were doing the thing that I think we were both very apt at doing, which was trying to help other people. So that's really how we got going on real estate. And then that's how we got sort of turned on to rent to own.
But Barry, there's just one very important detail that I think we've both left out, is that we also had quite an interesting, turbulent moment as part of our journey. So when we were expecting that baby that Neil just alluded to, our first daughter, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And at the time, I was on mat leave. She was 6 weeks old when I was officially diagnosed with an aggressive tumor. And at that point, I think all of my thoughts and desires about creating time freedom and pursuing a different approach other than corporate jobs, biweekly paychecks, planned vacations, asking for permission to take time off, and all of that started kind of going through my head. And I realized that I don't have control of my life. My life is really dictated by my boss. And at a time like this, time really seemed to take on a totally different meaning. When you're given a little bit of an expiry date, I was given an expiry date, and I didn't take that very lightly. And I certainly didn't take that lightly, given that I was in mama bear mode as well. So I think that was the real true catalyst that gave me the inspiration and the courage to kind of like slam that fist down on the table and say, Neil, screw this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna find a way. And because I had a huge why, I felt it was easier for me to just basically kind of muscle Neil into submission. I think that's kind of how it happened.
Yeah, I said convinced me, but what I really meant was made me. That's really how it played out, to be honest. At that moment, I was more in, we need the security of a job more than any other time. And it was really, you know, Rachel saying, this has to happen. We need to be more in control of what's going on with our lives. And, you know, and she pulled me along. To be really honest, she pulled me along.
Well, I just want to let everybody know that Neil said he was Mr. No earlier on in the conversation. He said he was Mr. No. He is so much Mr. No that I don't know. Sometimes Neil and Rachel bill themselves as Rachel O and Mr. No. Rachel O and Mr. No. It flows off the tongue. It's a great way to have a couple introduced. And I think Neil is making a little bit light of his his heel digging. How much he didn't want to do this. Got a great job with benefits and a great salary, and your wife has breast cancer and she wants to dive off the deep end into some unknown pool. I mean, that probably stoked your Mr. No tendencies even more, because Rachel is having a cataclysmic jolt because of breast cancer, and of course you were too. But I mean, is that the time to pitch everything and try something brand new? That's kind of scary, and I guess it lends itself to Rachel's ability to convince anybody to do something if she was able to get you to see it her way as at that time of your lives. My goodness, that is it's actually hard to believe that a stubborn guy like you, Neil. So, folks, this is what was going on in their lives, and this is how convincing Rachel is. And in the Dr. Rachel O and Mr. No partnership, Rachel is out there marketing. Guess why? Because she's a very convincing person. She can get people to see things her way. So Rachel, now you're investigating. Neil is digging in his heels, but you're investigating. You went out and you went to meet up groups, and I guess you went and talked and visited and listened to anybody that you could listen to in real estate, looking for what you thought would work for you and Neil. What kind of groups did you go to? I mean, who did you vet? How did you research this before you thought maybe rent to own is the way to go? Tell me about that part.
So we'll just build on the theme of Neil digging his heels in. There was actually a weekend seminar that was put on by Robert Kiyosaki. Rich Dad, I believe, was the official branding that they went under. So of course I dragged Mr. No, saying we're going to go to this webinar, we're going to go to this live event. It's a full weekend. And of course, Neil felt his weekends were sacred, because when you work 9 to 5, you come home, you want to chill. You don't want to have your weekend sitting in some sort of a conference room with a bunch of strangers learning about something that he wasn't even convinced he was interested in. But I just kept on wrangling him in. I said, we're doing this. And we went. And in that seminar, I have to give them credit. They walked through kind of the full gamut of all the different strategies that are out there. And they talked about your basic stuff, your buy, rent, hold stuff, which I, of course, was aware of. But what was stopping me from just jumping into that strategy, because it's common knowledge, you own a rental property, somebody pays the rent, over time, you start to make more income due to mortgage pay down, and it ends up being an asset to help you in your retirement years. I mean, most people know that. That's common knowledge, but it's also basic knowledge. And I wanted to go deeper than that, because for me, the goal was to replace our incomes. So for me to wait 7, 8, 9 years for somebody to pay down the mortgage just seemed like it was never going to help me reach my goal. Yes, it'll help me in my retirement, but I needed a solution for cash flow today. So I was seeking knowledge. So I went there to see what else is out there. What else can I learn? And the Rich Dad Conference actually did a great job of introducing us to all of the different possibilities. And guess what? Lease options, as the Americans refer to them, AKA rent to own, was on the table. And the minute I heard about what it does and how it can help people, automatically I started realizing that this is something that is going to be part of our journey in this world of real estate investing. So I think that was a huge turning point for me. Remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. It was not a turning point for me. Yeah, I was like very cynical. I'm like, what? Like the plants that were in the audience, oh my God, this is the best thing. It's life changing. I'm like, yeah, whatever. You were paid to be in here. Let's be realistic. Because what they want to do, and I'm not here to bash the program, but what they want you to do is run to the back of the room and spend $21,000 on some sort of educational thing where they're going to have somebody come to your house and show you how to do this. But the challenge was there was a real American slant. So they weren't really talking in Canadian real estate lingo. So that was not a turning point for me at all. In fact, that might have made me dig in a little bit further. But the turning point for me was that Rachel would go do little meetups in and around our area. And she actually came home one night and told me that she had met a gentleman who she convinced that he was going to mentor us. And that's not something that he did, but he's now going to be doing this. So I jumped in on that. At that point, I'm like, okay, we're doing this anyway. You've already made this commitment. Let's go with it. And yeah, here we are. So the mentorship was really good. But what it did was it really shined a light on what we do not want to have happen in a rent to own. The way that it was put together by this gentleman was sort of, half good. Let's put it that way. It was decent, but it wasn't perfect. So it allowed us to take it and make it our own. And that's really what happened from that mentorship.
So after the Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, now you needed to get some Canadianization of the rent to own strategy. And so out to meetups, and you run into someone who's doing rent to own. And well, just before I go to that, I just want to just do a little segue. Neil, you talked about being in the seminar and realizing that what they really want you to do, our American friends, the gurus, regrettably, there seems to be an agenda that does want you to go to the back of the room, and if you don't have enough room on your credit card, to phone and get the limit raised and spend the 21 or 30 or $40,000 on the program. And as much as you thought you were going there for something else, you were really going there to feed into them wanting you to spend those giant sums of money. So folks, I just want you to know that anything that Donna and I do, or that Neil and Rachel do, there is no running to the back of the room to hit your credit card and spend more money. There is no upselling at our focus workshops. Yes, you have to pay some money to join and get the fabulous education that we're going to give you that's worth a billion times what you're going to pay for it. Wow, that's a small exaggeration. But there's no going to the back of the room. Once you pay some money, that's all you're paying. So I just wanted to say that. I'm going to say it a few more times over the next weeks, just to make sure people understand what they're getting into if they ever come and see us at a focus workshop. But going back to your mentor, that's interesting. So the gentleman you met wasn't running a program. He wasn't in the business of teaching. So how did you, Rachel, how did you get him to agree to mentor you? How did that work?
Physically.
Well, I explained to him that a little flattery goes a long way. I explained to him that I was very impressed with the fact that he had done 20 rent to owns. He had openly talked, how some people stand up and kind of talk about their journey in a meetup. And I had seen him multiple times, and I had seen him share the different types of deals he had with the group. So he was, I guess, looking for partners, joint venture opportunities, and that he was promoting. So I had been observing him for quite some time. So I knew he had a lot of activity. And then I learned that he had done 20 deals, and I was really impressed by that, because I hadn't met anybody here in my local community of real estate investors that had actually been doing it and could maybe share their experience and share some of their systems. So I complimented him, and then I said, I'm looking to do the same thing. Would you be willing to teach me? And his first response was, no, I don't really do that. So then I said, well, what will it take? What, if you were to do that, what would the ideal situation look like? And there was a few exchanges back and forth in terms of conversation about time commitment, about monetary benefits to him and to us. And ultimately, I think I won him over just because I said to him, I don't want to mess up rent to owns for you. So what do I mean by that? Rent to owns in 2009 were very little understood. Very few people had success with them. We've heard that, it's a 50-50 chance. It's a scam. It's, it'll probably be a flop. There's a lot of people that were using rent to own or misusing rent to own. And this guy, I got the sense, was a good guy. He was a family man, and I felt like he really wanted to do good things. But I basically said to him, listen, if I try to do this on my own without proper guidance, I might mess it up so badly that you will suffer too, because we all need to stick together as rent to own people. And I think a light bulb went on in his head, and he said, okay, let's do this every Tuesday night from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. after your 2-year-old goes to sleep. We'll sit in front of the computer. I'll show you what I'm doing. I don't have a program. I don't have a system. He was an engineer, so he was more systemized than he thinks. But he said, I'll just be kind of an open book, and we'll have a dialogue. I'll show you what I'm doing, and you'll pick up what you pick up. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, no hard feelings. But what was really important to me, and I think that the part that Neil also got really excited about, was that we had somebody in our direct contact that would be there for us when we were doing our first damn deal. Because there's one thing to say, okay, show me how to do a strategy from scratch. We had no background in real estate investing. We weren't even on the same page about real estate investing. And, going from here's the theory or here's an example to now go and do it. Well, the now go and do it part was where Neil was really, really feeling uncomfortable. So I got this guy to basically agree to shadow or allow us to shadow him on some of his deals and be there for us to ask questions as we were taking steps and applying his teachings. And that was really what he was interested in doing to make sure that I didn't mess up.
This is a smart guy. I mean, he's done 20 or so successful deals. Rent to own did not have a good reputation in 2009. In fact, it had a bad reputation. And I can just hear him as he listens to you, Rachel, and he's going, she's right. If I let her go off blasting in all directions on her own, what is already not a very well-viewed business, she's probably going to ruin it for me. We're in the same neighborhood. She'll do stuff and it'll come blowing back on me. So I better help her out. I can just see him with his engineer's brain going and making an analysis. And there might be some truth to that. That when you don't know what you're doing, and if all you've got are bad role models, and he wasn't bad. I know you said he was doing some things right and some things not. But if what you can learn at the time is not really ethical, not really win-win, and you don't know what you're doing, it could have caused him a ton of trouble. So I think he was quite smart in agreeing to take you on. That's a smart thing. And then the next thing I think that I want people to hear, and you've alluded to, is it's one thing to have the book learning. It's one thing to have the education, It's another thing to actually get out there and do that one damn deal. And yes, that's what we say to people is we want you to do one damn deal, because we know if you do one, that will open the doors, open the floodgates, and you will do more deals. But it's that first damn deal that's the tough damn deal. And so you need some help. You need some help along the way to get to the point where you can do that deal. So let's go back to your helpful gentleman, and 9 till 11 for a number of months. How long did you do this, and when did you feel you were ready maybe to dip your toe in the water on your own?
Do you remember how long?
I think we did it for 4 months. Now it wasn't steady every week. There were some weeks where we just couldn't do it because we'd had a long work day, and staying up from 9 to 11 trying to learn numbers and strategies just wasn't the right thing for us in those days. But I think midway through month 3, we had pretty much, we kind of revamped the whole program, with the exception of the numbers, which we were still sort of finalizing from our side. But we took everything that he showed us, and we basically Rachel and Neil'd it. So by month 3, I think we were ready to go. Well, let me say that we think we were ready to go. I ended up being the one to go out and advertise and market the program, and I went to meet a few people. Now, I was doing all of this while I was still working, but it was a real wake-up call to actually be in front of somebody and trying to show them that what you are offering is good for them. Because again, the reputation was not great. So people would always talk about, well, I read online that someone got scammed. All of these things were happening. So I became quite discouraged by all these people that just had nothing but negative things to say. And I'm like, maybe we made a mistake. But then we got our first deal, and it was a family that really needed help. The mom had some thyroid cancer, and they really wanted to get into a home of their own. And we ended up helping them get into their home. And that was the first positive thing that we had. So that just sort of, honestly, the dam burst after that. And we had a lot of people reaching out to us. We had a lot of success after that. In fact, to the point where I left my job because I needed to focus primarily on rent to own.
And so how long did that take? So 3 or so. I mean, Rachel's out doing all of her investigating and meetupping, and then you did Kiyosaki, and then you did 3 or so months with your helpful mentor. And then how long did it take for you to do that first deal? How did you find how did you find that first deal, and how long did it take to put it together?
It wasn't graceful.
No.
And I think probably it took a little while to actually get the tenant buyer, because this type of a strategy is not just about the property. This strategy is very much about the people. And we're solving a problem. As you know, the rent-to-own strategy, more than any other strategy, obviously agreements for sale is a very similar type of a solution-oriented strategy, where a person goes to a bank, they get declined for a mortgage, they don't have the funds to qualify for private financing, and they don't have the heart to continue to rent. So they're looking for another solution. So rent-to-own solves a problem and allows them to get into home ownership through the rent-to-own process, so they can have the time they need to fix their credit situations. And when they go back to the bank a few years later, the bank will say yes to them. That's the ideal plan. But because most people don't understand how it works, they hesitate, they just distrust. Rent-to-own had a very tarnished reputation. So I feel like it took a good 3 to 4 months for us to nail down that first damn deal.
Yeah, we finished with a mentor, I believe, in November. And by end of January, we had the first deal in place. And then that year we did 5 or 6. We didn't do very many. We were just sort of ramping up. And again, Rachel was very convincing. Like I mentioned, she made me leave my job. Basically, you're not working anymore, get over it and get out there and start doing this. So that's kind of how it played out. And then, you know what, the truth is, you know, you when you're helping people and they're actually very grateful, and you can see them going down the path of being able to succeed and, you know, get into their own home, which maybe many of them haven't had. it's quite rewarding, and you become very, very passionate about what you're doing. And that's really what happened with us.
It's humbling. It's very humbling. So this type of opportunity solved a problem for us that we needed cash flow. But the humbling part was that it was bigger than us. It solved a problem for so many other families who needed the help more than we needed the help. And we were able to facilitate that. And I think that's what really hooked me in.
Yeah, no,
and that's
absolutely.
what got him to say yes.
Buzzing and popping a bit there. It's the underpinning of what we do in our creative real estate education series. The notion of helping is just it supports everything that we do. I'm just wondering, Neil, when you were leaving your job, your I'm not going to say cushy job, but you had a high level corporate job that paid well, benefits, holidays. How did you put it to your boss that you were saying goodbye? What did you do on that score?
You know what, I had been talking about with people in the office about what we were looking at doing for months previous. So once we started mentoring, I was already putting it out there. Maybe unbeknownst to me, I was putting it out there. And next thing you know, we get to this point where we have to make this decision. So it was actually much easier than you think. The hardest part was taking that leap of faith. Telling them why I was doing it was very different, because I wasn't going into a competing job or a competing firm. I was creating our own thing, and our own thing was going to generate happiness for other people. And I think sometimes that's the one thing that I think people, not in Rent Home, but in general, when they open a business, sometimes they forget that when you open a business, you've got to be there to help other people, right? It can't always be about how much money you can make. The money will flow when you're helping people. And, that was what made it so easy, is I would just say, listen, we're going to be helping a lot of families get into home ownership. And at the time, no one in my office knew what I was even talking about. So, yeah, and it's funny to talk to them now, and they're like, wow, I can't believe that you guys this has just taken off for you. But again, if you're passionate about it and you have the drive and determination, and the right motive, I think the motive is the key here, right? We really wanted to help people, and it's just been an amazing journey.
Now, I want everybody listening to really understand one thing: that if you're married or in a partnership, you both have to be on board. And so, in Neil and Rachel's case, Rachel was driving the bus here, and Neil wasn't on board for a certain period of time. I'm not going to put a time on it, but he wasn't on board. And if Neil had really dug in his heels and been a bad Mr. No in this case, then this is unlikely to have happened, because couples have to be aligned. You can't in a partnership do this without at least the agreement of your partner. Sometimes partners don't participate, but they don't oppose. They're not saying you're nuts, or even worse, if you carry on like this, we'll probably be broken up. I mean, you need to be pulling and doing together. That's the best way to do it, and it harnesses the different capabilities that couples often have. It's it's very, very much the rule, I think, that you don't marry someone who's exactly like you, or get into a partnership with someone exactly like you. You find and look for other qualities. So speaking of those complementary qualities, you probably, by listening to Neil and Rachel, can see what those qualities are. But Rachel, tell us who you are as a personality, and where you are in this thing called rent to own. What is the part that you do best, and that you support because of who you are and how you and Neil have decided to break up the jobs? Tell us about that part.
Yeah, absolutely. As you can see, I'm probably the outspoken one. I am the visionary. I am the risk taker. I am the trailblazer. And honestly, Barry, I have to say I am all those things because Neil allows me to be all those things and supports me to be all those things and offsets my shortfalls with the things that he brings to the table. And don't get me wrong, we too had those conversations where, he said, "You're crazy." And I said, "Well, I'm going to leave you if you don't do this with me." We had all of those conversations.
You still have them.
Well, different versions of it, but we fought. Neil really dug in his heels. He did not see what I saw. And not only did he not see what I saw as far as the real estate investing strategy, he didn't see what I saw in terms of how it would play a part in helping us transform our lifestyle and for us to be able to walk away from 2 six-figure jobs and feel secure and feel like I know where tomorrow's paycheck is going to come from. That was mind-blowing for Neil, but I saw that. But because he didn't, it gave me the thrust to want to continue to show him different ways to settle his insecurities and to settle his fears. So I did that by talking about how we can solve a problem for people with other investors. Because as you know, every investor, past your first damn deal, second damn deal, third, fourth, you kind of hit a wall. And Neil was perfectly happy. Okay, we're good. Let's just chill. We tried it. It was hard. We did it, got the t-shirt. Let's move on. And I said, no, we need to now change our approach and we need to keep going, but we just can't do it with our own resources. Now we need to tap other people. We need to talk to people outside of ourselves, because if it can create cash flow for us, it's going to create cash flow for others. And we're still helping and fulfilling that philosophy. So then I started talking to other people about investing, and either through us, with us, we just started to create more buzz. And at some point, it wasn't me just knocking on doors, say, "Hey, let me tell you about what we're doing. Maybe you want to do it with us." At some point, the tables turned and people started saying, "Hey, I heard about what you're doing. Tell me how I could benefit from it." And that's when I knew that we're truly solving a problem on both sides of the coin, not just for the home buyers who need this program, but also for investors who also, like us, want to offset their annual household income, or eventually maybe even replace it. So that was my role, and that continues to be my
role. So, folks, before we hear from Neil about his strengths, what he brings to this, number one, I knew that the getting Neil on board wasn't just quite as easy as it seemed to be when we started this out about a half an hour ago. In that part of it, Neil went, I don't like this, Rachel. We have six-figure jobs, the two of us. We're not quitting those jobs for some harebrained idea that you get when you go out. I don't even know where you go at night, but you come home with all these ideas. That's pretty true. I don't think it was. I didn't think it was easy as he's saying. One of the nights you come home. Oh, really? Okay, I get it now. Yeah, sure. What was it called again? Oh, rent own. Absolutely, I'm in. I knew it was way, way tougher than that, and thank you for just saying that, because I knew it was. So, folks, as you're listening to this, you can hear Neil and Rachel talk about getting the germ of the idea and doing something for themselves to do what Rachel suggested they needed to do, which is to have some cash flow, to have a life of their own, a less rigid, stratified sort of life. And as you move through that path, you're doing that for yourself. Then you realize maybe you realize at the same time you're doing it to help people. And then you develop it as a business that's more than a one-off. And then you're able to help not only the people that need your expertise on the rent-to-own side, and we're going to talk lots more about that, but all the other people who are you. There's lots of Rachel O and Dr. No's out there who are looking for something just like what you're talking about, and it's a here, there, and you build on it, and it gets to be like this. So as we work through these next weeks and talk more to Neil and Rachel about about this journey. We're going to hear more details about those specific steps. Now, having said that, Neil, over to you to talk about who you are. What are your personality traits and talents, and what did you bring to this crazy idea that Rachel's forcing you into?
Originally, I didn't think I brought anything. At the time, I was working in online marketing. So I was working on, a lot of the online campaigns that Bell Canada and Coca-Cola and so on were all running at the time. So I would build out Google campaigns. I would build out, marketing platforms for them. And I loved what I did. I really did. I really enjoyed it. But it seemed to be a very easy transfer of those skills into our current Clover Properties business. So originally I built the website, I built out all the marketing, online marketing stuff, the Google campaigns. That was my original sort of skill set, but I also do have a very strong math background and at the time anyway, was very involved in stats and statistics. So it became almost second nature to be the one to run all of the numbers. So basically I do everything that Rachel doesn't do.
Yeah, it's like divide.
Yeah, there is a massive divide, and without both of us, I think the business would be challenged, simply because to do this, going on camera, to go in front of people on a stage, that is not my comfort zone. I become Mr. No very quickly when that pops back up, because I don't love it. But, that is something that Rachel excels at. But I excel on putting the spreadsheets together. Excel, you see how I did that? I excel in spreadsheets. Sorry, bad joke. But that's what I do. I do the spreadsheets. I do all the qualifying. A few years ago, went out and got my mortgage license. So now I'm basically prepping them for their future mortgage today. I'm going through all their documentation. I'm treating them like I would treat them a couple of years from now if I was to qualify them. So we've advanced everything that we're doing on this end with regards to qualifying them, pre-screening them, setting their budget, realistic numbers, watching the market. I also did a lot of attending inspections, and I became pretty almost an expert at inspections without actually wanting to do them myself. So I did everything outside of what Rachel did. I'm the doer. She's the thinker. I do not have her ability to think at a large scale. I see what's in front of me today. I got to feel it to know it's there, where she's like, it's not there yet, but it's coming. Right. So we're very different that way. It's complete yin and yang, but definitely it works. And, if I could go in front of the camera, then, I could put her under the bus like she did to me when I was saying this. So that's kind of what we bring to the table.
And for everybody who's watching this, I mean, this is what partnerships are all about. You can't have
still with us?
Can't have everybody with the same skill set.
One thing, well,
It's a lovely look.
I don't know if
I don't know if we're the frozen ones or Barry's the frozen one. But if we're still, I just wanted to add that you also have a knack for connecting with the people that we are working with in the strategy.
Yes, and Neil couldn't help but have that
Barrier.
with all the interaction. All right, I think we got some freezing time here. Not sure who it is. Is it me or is it you or is it both of us? Are we frozen? I'm just going to carry on, and we'll unfreeze, and once it pause. All right, so
internet.
At this point, I just want to say that as we move into our next live at fives, we're going to get into a lot more of the specific aspects of RTO. Lots more specific aspects of RTO as we move along. So we set this up for about 1 hour, and so we're about 15 minutes from the hour. So I would like to just maybe see if there's a couple of questions that need answering. before we go further. So Al Brown says, what province are you doing rent to own? Is there a sweet spot for price categories with rent to own? Well, that's two questions. So Neil and Rachel, you can tell everybody again what province you're in and talk about sweet spot for price categories where you are.
Sure. So we're in Ontario, and we primarily work in Ontario. We cover the entire province, so from one end to the other. And basically for us, the sweet spot is anything under 800,000. We consider entry-level homes to be the sweetest spot, but because of the way our market has been going, entry-level homes keep getting pushed up in value. We're very fortunate. We do have an amazing investor base that can afford up to 800,000, so we're able to. Ideally, it would be a lower priced home, something in that entry level price point where you're going to see going to be the most successful rent to own that you can put together.
So whatever the entry point price point is in any market, it doesn't have to be Ontario. And some entry point might be 280, and some it might be 350, and others it's 550. So depending where you are, the strategy is to be in the entry level.
So, folks, that's important to know. So this is a cross Canada strategy, and those, as Rachel says, those sweet spots, those entry level prices are different in every province, and so that's as we start to dig down into some of those details. We'll talk a bit more about that and what you do to figure out what that spot is. All right, I think we've taken care of Al's question. Any more questions up there? It's a nice pick, Al. Okay, Cheryl. What does Cheryl say? Since you're in Ontario, how are you making this a good buy for the new homeowner and profitable for you? So, Cheryl, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. Neil and Rachel are in Ontario, and they have a fire wagon rent-to-own business. They've got tons and tons of stuff going on, even in these busy times. As prices keep getting pushed up, there's still a lot of people who need help. So, well, why am I answering the question when I have experts? What do you guys think of Cheryl's question?
You're the numbers guy.
Yeah, so the reality is when we're purchasing a home here in Ontario, the key is to not overpay for that home. So we do not waive conditions unless the investor has got cash to purchase a home, and unless we do a pre-inspection. We still would prefer to do an appraisal on every house, because what we buy it for really determines what they're going to buy it for in the future. So the reality is you can make a rent-own profitable at any price. That's the reality, as long as the market is showing growth, right? So it could be 2%, it could be 6%, it could be 15%, like we see here in some areas. The rent to own, as long as you're buying it for a good price that fits the market, and that's also very difficult. We're seeing homes selling for 100,000 over list, and it's selling with 14, 15, 18 offers, which is kind of crazy. But we focus on homes that really aren't going to offer presentation. So homes that have been on the market for 20 days, 15 days, 14 days, where there's a bit of room to, if nothing more than negotiate a lower price, at least to buy it for what it's worth at list price. So as long as you're doing that and you're setting reasonable appreciation on that, you can certainly make a profit on any rent to own and still make it very fair and very win-win for both parties, or all parties.
So then, so you said that you work all across Ontario. Does that mean that you have been able to make yourself experts in the various markets? Because Ontario is more than Toronto. I mean, it's a vast province with lots of people and lots of different markets. Do you feel like you have a handle on what are going on in those different markets? And how do you do that? How do you kind of know what to? You just base it on an appraisal? Tell me about that part.
Yeah, so I personally would say that I'm about 90% an expert in the areas that we work in. So we've done multiple deals in certain areas like Ottawa or Windsor or London or Barrie. And when I'm saying multiples over 11 years, we're talking 20, 30 deals in each of those areas. So each year, there are different tools online that certainly you can use and research. We also have a lot of amazing realtors that we work with in all of these different areas as well. So picking up the phone and calling a realtor that is, nose deep in the Ottawa market, they're going to be able to give you some really good insight into what the Ottawa market is doing. And then you have a really good idea, because you might also use that realtor to make the purchase, right? We use realtors for every single purchase. So you have to have, for us anyway, we have to have a really good people on the ground. And not only can they help us with the purchase, but like I said, they can help us with the insight into what those areas are doing. So we have a really good idea of sort of what to be charging on the appreciation side.
There are a lot of resources online. I think you would agree, Barry. Over the years, between 2009 and 2020, so much more content has come out about various markets, statistics, insights, things you can Google, other investors talking about their experience in various markets. There's so much more information now than there ever was before. And it's just important to stay abreast. I'm constantly reading. And I'm not just reading about, what are the appreciation statistics in a given market. I'm a member of various groups out there, and I get that data. But I'm also reading about information of where are the home buyers moving to, where are the builders popping up the most. All of that information ultimately makes us that much more comfortable in pursuing various markets. And we know that certain parts of Ontario are still a no-no. They might be percolating slowly, but we just don't feel comfortable in going into certain markets. So I think it's a question of just, being very proactive about the knowledge that you're gathering.
Yeah, you have to do it. Diligence comes in many forms, and RTO is no different. I mean, there's various levels of diligence, there's various kinds of diligence, and you have to do them if you're going to be successful. Knowledge is power, and as you say, Rachel, there's never been a better time or an easier time to accomplish diligence and get the knowledge you need than really right now. So before we sign off tonight, I think we have a few more questions, and we'll just have a look. How has COVID affected new RTO deals? Oh, good one, Irene.
Oh, Irene, I love that. I love Irene's question, because what we've discovered as part of this whole COVID journey, or COVID saga, or nightmare, whatever you want to call it, we were a little bit scared. I think, like every real estate investor who has a portfolio, there was a lot of uncertainty, but we were very pleasantly surprised at just how COVID proof, and I really want to use that word, COVID proof, RTOs are. Neil can give, because he's statistically oriented and numbers oriented, he can actually give an example of what happened with the deals we had on the go. We had 70 on the go, you were saying, at the time?
Well, yeah. So 2 things to answer that question. Number one, you just change the way you screen your potential tenant buyers, right? You're no longer going to work with restaurant workers or waitresses.
Or tourism.
Things where COVID could impact them today, and then they could be back to work for 3 months, and then they're impacted again. Who knows what the future is going to hold. Mm-hmm. So we just changed a little bit about who we were targeting in terms of our screening. And not that we had a lot of people in restaurants anyway coming through the program, but at that time, back in May, I think maybe it was April. Yeah, I think it was April. We ended up having 74 active deals at that time, and we manage and support all 74. So we ended up doing a quick communication to all 74 to let them know that we understood what they were going through and that we're here to help them. And out of that, we only had 6 people that needed a little bit of help. So, and by a little bit of help, what I mean by that is that they didn't pay their down payment credit, which I know we'll get into a lot more with a lot more detail going forward, but they didn't pay that for a 3 or 4 month period, but they continued to pay the rent. So that house was constantly, the expenses were always being paid on it. So the investors were never out of pocket at all through the COVID experience. Whereas I see in rental units, things are changing daily with how the landlord tenant board is treating people who aren't paying and how landlords are responding to that. So yeah, one thing that this has showed me, and I always believed it anyway, any time, and this just really for me.
Sorry, just to add to Neil's point, on the flip side, I also noticed that there was a lot more investors who were coming forward during the COVID period saying, you know what, my rentals aren't really cash flowing, and I feel like I need to add some rent to owns to my portfolio to offset the lack of cash flow. And I want to get into rent to owns because of the cash flow. So there was an abundance of people, investors, partners who wanted to get into this strategy because it had such lucrative cash flow when all other strategies seemed to be compromised. Flippers weren't doing a lot of stuff because their projects were delayed, so they weren't getting that capital back as quickly. A lot of rental properties were struggling because renters were also deferring their payments. And in general, this strategy seemed to continue to push on because we're not dealing with renter mentality type of tenants. We're dealing with people who have invested a down payment, who are motivated to become homeowners, who are passionate about the property that they're in, and they are really craving stability. So they were much more committed. So that drew a lot of investors to want to work with us as well.
That's a wonderful thing to hear, that this disaster that's striking the world is not that bad for your business. Ilona, what does Ilona say? Ah, good question, Ilona. Any advice for getting a spouse to participate? Well,
get a rolling pin and hit them over the head. It works. To be honest with you, I think that's a great question. It's really a challenging question because I don't really know at what point I came on board. Like, Rach had done so much work and I was resisting all the way through, and I know it was upsetting her because she just seemed like she was slamming into a wall day after day after day. What I would probably suggest would be, and this is something that she did not do, she did not lay the plan down for me. And I am one of those people that I have to, again, see it to know it's there. So rather than telling me that this is what's going to happen, which I couldn't see, maybe playing it out on a piece of paper or in a, some sort of way of describing how this could work and how it could look might have changed the way things were for me at the time. But yeah, just telling me wasn't good enough. And attending wasn't good enough because I wasn't at that state of mind where I wanted to go. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to be there. There were other things I could be doing, but looking back on it now, I mean, obviously the freedom I thought I had back then has really been offset by the freedom we really have now. So, it is really, it's a really challenging thing, but I think laying it out for me would have been probably the best approach.
And if I had to do it all over again, Ilona, I think I would have gotten to the heart of the matter with Neil faster. Neil is a numbers guy. And I didn't know that until we ventured into the world of real estate investing, because it doesn't really come up when you're dating. Hey, are you a numbers guy? How many kids are we going to have? It's not a common conversation. So I really didn't know Neil in the context of the business box. How would he be? Because, real estate investing is a business. And I didn't know where his triggers were and what were the hot buttons. But as we got into the conversation with the person that we were learning from, I could see Neil perking up a little bit more when the spreadsheets would come out, when they would start dissecting the formulas. Neil was really immersed and really engrossed. And that's when it hit me, light bulb. Okay, if I keep focusing on the numbers, which I personally hate, then he will light up. So identifying what he gets or what your partner gets excited about might be a really good step. And if I have to do that all over again, I would have done it sooner.
Yeah, it's the old story, isn't it? You have to find what resonates with the person across the table from you.
Exactly.
across the bed from you. Got to find what resonates, and looking back, well, seems obvious, I guess, but then we kind of are who we are about how we think about things. And but Neil, it's a great idea. It'll be
That doesn't work for me at all, Barry.
No, he doesn't see the big picture at all. He's very much like, show me the now, the here, the practical side of it. And I don't think that way. Yeah. So for the longest time, we were talking different languages.
You know, what's really amazing is that back then too, in order to get started, we had to take equity out of our property. And, you know, she brought this idea to me and I'm like, are you nuts? Why am I taking out more debt? I have zero interest in doing this. And now I understand it. And I'm like, okay, wait a second. Taking the equity out of my property is going to make a lot more money for me. But the way I was, you know, like all of us, we're all brought up the way our parents bring us up. And back in those days, you know, parents talk about money doesn't grow on trees and you got to stay out of debt because it's bad. You know, these are the things that I was shown and taught. And
you got to work hard.
Yeah, work hard. You got to put food on the table for your family. And it was getting past all of those previous teachings that, you know, really helped me to understand where we were going.
We've run out of time for tonight, but I just want to finish off, I guess, with one thing. So at the beginning, you talked about you both had great jobs, six-figure jobs. Neil thought that was the life. This was it. Why would we ever want to do anything else? Rachel's looking for, you know, more time and a different kind of life. And so I want you to just say roughly, Rachel, do you think after this journey that started 11 years ago, I mean, it sounds to me like you've reached it. Tell me, have you replaced all that income, and do you have the kind of life you want now that you're a full-time rent-to-own person?
Yeah, Barry, I honestly have to say all of this effort in trying to get Neil on board, and of course the hard work to start something new and trailblaze, it's truly paid off. We, you know, when our kids were still in school, we would be here for them every morning. We would be home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or pick them up at, you know, right after school. We'd be the first people they see after a long day. We created that connection that I felt I was losing when I was working, you know, a 50, 60-hour week, climbing a corporate ladder for the benefit of who? Waiting for the next raise, waiting for that bonus and paying a huge portion of that bonus to the tax man. It was very unfulfilling. And yes, of course we had to take a few steps back, but we ended up, you know, leaping forward way beyond, you know, we have exceeded what we were earning in our previous jobs. We have exceeded how much time we spend with our children, with our aging parents. And we have so much more freedom to make choices that other people are stuck not being able to make. You know, we can just pack up on short notice and take a holiday. When we're away, we can just extend that holiday spontaneously without having to call somebody and say, hey, I'm sick, I'm not coming into work. You know, the nonsense. We can, you know, just basically live more spontaneously and more freely. And honestly, it's just, so yes, absolutely.
But that being said, don't get me wrong, or don't get us wrong. There's still a lot of time that you put into the business, right? We still work
on your time. You
absolutely.
Put it in on your time.
We still work 50 or 60 hours a week, but we choose when. You know, we're not at our desk at 9 o'clock in the morning. We're dealing with our children, and now we're able to spend more time with them while they're homeschooling. And, you know, maybe it's not the most exciting time, but we're forcing them to do what they need to do, and that seems like a lot more work. But definitely, I think the key is we choose, right? We get to choose how our days are spent and choose how our vacations are spent. We can work on the vacation. We, you know, just having choice is massive. And I thought I had tons of choice 12 years ago when I got my 2 weeks of vacation. But the reality is, you know, it was next to nothing compared to what we have now. So yeah, absolutely. We've leaps and bounds from where we were.
All right, folks, So that is your introduction to Neil and Rachel. They're part of our focus team. They're going to be front and center on March the 6th when we do our all-day focus workshop. We're going to be all in there together. The rest of the focus team will be participating, and I hope that listening to Neil and Rachel tonight gives you a sense of what you can do with creative real estate, and particularly you're going to hear lots more over the next few weeks about rent to own as we dig into some more of the details, moving towards March the 6th. So Neil, Rachel, thanks for being on, taking some of your time away from those chillins of yours there, and so we'll say goodbye to everybody now, and we'll be catching up to you the next time we do this, because we're going to be doing a few of these over the next few weeks. So thank you very much. We do appreciate it.
Thanks, Barry.
Thank you, Barry.
Good
Thanks,
night,
everyone.
everybody.